Welcome to another episode of the Spurs Takeover in partnership with Project Spurs. Today, we are going to be joined by our co hosts, Benjamin Bornstein and Wesley Perkins. Gentlemen, we are going to be recapping the week that was San Antonio Spurs basketball through the first 5 games. So, gentlemen, let's go ahead and start with you, Ben. What has been the good, the bad, and the ugly that you've seen from the San Antonio Spurs through these first 5 games?
The good has been DeJounte Murray playing much better than he did last year, and a lot of the young guys getting more minutes. The bad has been Rudy Gay putting up a ton of shots and not making a whole lot of them. And I would say the ugly has been Drew Eubanks outplaying Jakob Pertl so far this season, which is not what you expected when you re-signed Jakob Pertl for as much as you did and for the reasons you did. Also, just maybe dunk a ball every now and then. Don't never go full Tiago splitter, man. You can't lay everything up.
Which it was Tiago's birthday on Friday, so happy birthday to Tiago. And
My guy.
Wesley, hey, there's your guy. And Wesley, what have been your observations through these first 5 games? Again, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, the good is you're seeing the development of players like Keldon and DeJounte and Lonnie that are really coming into their own, and it's exciting to watch the brand of basketball that we're seeing. The bad, I guess, would be that we still see at times when the veterans are on the floor together that this team kind of loses its way and starts to hold the ball and it starts to slow down quite a bit. And the ugly, very similar to Ben, very astute point, is Jakob Pertl's inability to dunk the freaking ball. I swear to you guys, I'm 5'9", and I would die to be able to dunk a basketball. I cannot tell you. I still want to put a 7-foot goal out on my lawn so I can go dunk. But if I'm 7 feet tall, I'm stuffing people into baskets. I'm just saying. That's got to be the ugliest thing ever is Jakob Pertl looks like he's afraid to shoot the ball. That's ugly.
And there you go. I'm going to say through the first 5 games, the one thing that I've noticed is that the Spurs have been competitive. Let's go ahead and take off the board, the blowout win that the Lakers had over the San Antonio Spurs in their first matchup of the back to back. You've liked what you've seen out of San Antonio with the mixture of both the youth movement out there, the youth, the younger players, and also the veterans. You like the competitive nature that this team has. At least they're running up and down the court. They're remaining competitive with some of the better teams in the Western Conference. The bad thing that I'm seeing is, yes, you all just pointed it out. Jakob Portal, what's going on with him? He's just looked horrible, horrible, so much so that he's getting outplayed and out hustled by one Drew Eubanks. And Jakob once again settling for these little bunnies, these little layups. And if he just went aggressively to the rim and had like this, I don't know, he needs an inflection of some aggression. You got to get mean, you got to get angry. That scene from Dodgeball. Dunk the ball, Jakob. What are you doing? Layups, they're gonna just they're not even going in. They're just immediately he tried to do a little layup. He went underneath the rim. He tried to do like a reverse layup. Didn't even work. It just bounced right off the backboard and it went the other way to LA and they went down the court and converted on that mistake. These opportunities are points that Jakob is leaving off the board. And the one thing that has been ugly so far too, and it reared its ugly head in these back-to-backs against the Lakers, are the Spurs defensive lapses. There's some type of miscommunication that's occurring. And I think even Ben and you, Wesley, have pointed this out. When they have those miscommunication or those miscues on the defensive end, what happens? LeBron James is just throwing a lob pass the opposite end of the court, and it's an easy two or it's a dunk. And Spurs fans were really upset in this last outing against the Lakers. We lost by 6 points, and it was the refs' fault. It was not the refs' fault. If you go back, look at the tape. How many of those easy layups or an easy dunk did the Lakers have with those lob passes? Because the San Antonio Spurs had those missed cues on the defensive end. If you were to take those points back, this game would have been a lot closer and it could have maybe given the Spurs an opportunity to win, but it wasn't because once again, you have these defensive miscues. But it goes along with the youth movement, which we're going to get into right now, starting with you, Ben. Through these first 5 games, what have we been telling Spurs fans about these younger players? And what has come to fruition, Ben?
Have patience. Be patient. Let the game come to them. Give them their minutes. They're finally getting their minutes. DeJounte Murray, still turning the ball over a little bit, but finding other guys, has been a much more confident shooter. DeMar DeRozan, even, much better shooting this year, much better decision making. He's shooting 3-pointers now. And that opens up the rest of the floor for everybody else, especially the young guys who are all pretty able and willing slashers and drivers. So youth movement is full go. We just got to figure out what this staff is doing with Devin Vassell, because he looked good in the few minutes he's been given throughout some games, and then the last game he just doesn't play. To me, that doesn't make sense, especially if you're not going to send him down to Austin whenever that season starts. I believe it gets going later this month. But if you're not going to send him down to Austin to work on some stuff, you have to find the time to get him in the game and really see what he can do. He's given us some glimpses, but we don't really know. So I think that's going to be key as well. And the last game, the Spurs only played 9 guys, and that's with LaMarcus Aldridge out. When he comes back and they're only playing the 9 or 10 guys, there's going to be a problem. All right, there's not going to be as much cohesiveness. You just have to find time for all these players. Not all of them, but some of them you really do need to see what you have with them. Like, you have to find out what Lucas Samanic is going to do for you this year. You have to find out what Devin Vassell is going to do for you this year. Maybe you don't really need to see what Trey Jones is going to do for you this year. Not in San Antonio. He'll be a guy who goes down to Austin. Well, I guess technically they're all going to Orlando now, since that's where the bubble environment will be. But, there are some guys where if you want to make an informed decision on their contracts in the next couple of years, you have to get them on the floor and see what they're capable of.
Yeah, no doubt. So I wanted to talk to you about something too. And with this youth movement, like you had stated, it's going to come with inexperience, and I think that's one of the things that we've seen through these first 5 games. Again, making some critical mistakes here and there, both on offense and on defense. But overall, you do like where this team is going as far as the youth getting that much needed experience in order to get better. And that's one of the things that we had talked about even before the season had started. I talked about it with both you, Ben, and with Wesley, that Spurs fans are going to have to be patient this season, because while the team will look good, they're going to look sexy running out there with these young players. They're going to have some really spectacular dunks, and they're going to look great in the open court. It's going to come with the inexperience. So again, we're going to have to be patient. And so, Wesley, again, your question is to you. What have you thought about the youth movement so far?
I can't think of a time that I haven't been more excited to watch Spurs basketball, to be honest. Every possession, just, and it comes with the lumps. We're all saying it. There's going to be moments of, like Joe, you pointed out, defensive lapses that make us pull our hair out, not securing a rebound, not being able to, get into the right set and causing a turnover, or, just little things here and there. But then again, then you see at times what's to be. I mean, there was one moment last night where you saw DeJounte and Derek on the floor, which thank God we get to see Derek on the floor again. But they were just harassing the Lakers guards, causing turnovers. I remember one time in particular, Schroeder turned around to get the ball to shoot, and he dropped the ball out of bounds. And it was just like, he was so frustrated. You can see the talent when all of these guys get enough run together. It's just going to take some time. And it's also about kind of what Ben, you said about getting rotations together. My biggest question, though, comes with the youth movement is they're all showing improvement. If I sit here and just go down some shooting stats for a second, DeJounte Murray shooting 52% from the floor, 52%. That's incredible. You're talking about Keldon shooting 45.5%. You're talking about Lonnie Walker shooting almost 45% together collectively. And those are stats, again, that just show the work that they're doing from an offensive standpoint. But let's not forget, defensively, this team should be a lot better with these young guys as they go forward, because that's what most of these guys have in their blood. Keldon, DeJounte, Derek are great defenders, but they just haven't had the time just yet. Again, we haven't seen them hold just yet. Derek's on minutes restriction. We're not going to see that for a little while. So I think the more time that goes on, we're going to see that become more comfortable. The question really becomes what's going to happen with the inflection, as you said, Joe, and Ben, of what the veterans do with them, because Patty Mills is playing, Olympic
FIBA
Patty,
Patty.
right? So,
FIBA.
and he's shooting the highest percentage of any of the Spurs right now at 55%. So the question here really becomes, what do you do? What do you do when he's on the floor taking a volume of shots that's taking away from the youth? There comes a time when you have to say, what is our identity? Is the identity to give these guys the tools, let them go? It's their style, it's their play, or is it only going to be for short bursts? I think that's going to cause a lot of confusion. And what they have to decide is, as a team, what style of basketball is truly going to fit, because we can see just different segments of the game that they look completely different once they have different lineups in.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the things that I'd like to talk about here, and I'm going to ask each one of you guys, who your standout player is. I'm going to tell you mine right now. My standout player through these first 5 games has been none other than DeMar DeRozan.
Oh.
DeMar DeRozan, through these first 5 games, he's averaging 21.8 points, 8 assists. His field goal percentage is 49.3. He's shooting from beyond the arc. 3-point percentage. I can't believe I'm talking about DeMar DeRozan and 3-point percentage. He's actually really good. 53.8%. He went 3 of 4 from beyond the arc in yesterday's outing against the Lakers. You like everything that he's putting together this season. He just looks great. He looks very comfortable out there in this Spurs system, and he's playing amazing basketball alongside the youth that we have out there. And I got to come back to Ben. I'm going to call Ben out. Last season, and you know it as well, Wesley. Ben was ready to send DeMar to the glue factory. He's done. And now look at what happened this season. Ben, what do you got to say about DeMar?
I'm happy to be wrong. I will say this, though. He was not shooting threes last year.
No, he wasn't.
Right? He's coming to this year with a different perspective. He's getting paid a lot of money. He would like to continue to get paid a lot of money. So I think he kind of figured it's time I expand my game. And he has. And it's been great. He's averaging 8 assists. He's clearly opened up the floor for other guys. He's been able to find other guys. And now teams have to respect him from the perimeter because he can hit those shots. It completely changes the landscape of how they can play on offense, and it's great. So thank you, DeMar DeRozan, for making me look stupid. I appreciate it. And please continue to do so the rest of the season.
Well, I got to ask you, since I called you out because I told you who my standout player of these first 5 games, it's been DeMar DeRozan. Who has your standout player been through these first 5 games?
Well, for me, it's been Keldon Johnson. Sorry. Keldon Big Body
Big
Johnson.
Body. You say his name right.
Put some respect on it.
Exactly.
Now he's been fantastic. Honestly, he's exactly what we thought he'd be. He is who we thought he was, and we did not let him off the hook, and it's been great. He has shot the ball really well. He has been aggressive on offense. He has been very good on defense. He has been bodying just about everyone they throw in front of him on defense, and it has been a joy and pleasure to watch. I love me some Keldon Johnson. I was ecstatic when the Spurs got him at 29. I'm even more ecstatic now.
Let me read off some of the stats from your boy Keldon Johnson here. So far for the first 5 games, he's averaging 15 points a game. He's averaging 7.6 rebounds a game, 2.4 assists. He's shooting 45.5% from the field. His 3-point shooting percentage is 42.9%. His free throw shooting percentage is 84.2%, which means when he gets fouled, he can actually make his shots, which helps put points on the board. Altogether, you didn't have a player that you couldn't be happier with right now as far as the youth movement goes. He's just been very solid through these first 5 games. So you were dead on with your analysis right there. He's been great, Ben. So let's go ahead and move over to Wesley. And Wesley, who has been your standout player through the first 5 games?
Well, Ben, like you, I've got to eat a little bit of crow too because I'm on record as not being a very big DeJounte Murray fan. I haven't been over the years. And so it's funny, Joe had tweeted out last night, hey, all you DeJounte haters, where you at? And I'm going to be honest with you. I had said that when he got a contract extension just recently, maybe a year or so ago, that I thought that was a little premature. And he's the second leading scorer on this team at 17.2 points a game. He's averaging 7.6 rebounds a game, 6 assists a game, 1.2 steals a game. He's filling out the stat sheet, fellas. And more important than that, he's really found a comfort zone to helping run this offense. And I was really, Ben, we had this conversation, and Joe as well, with the fact that we didn't know whether Derek was really the point guard, whether DeJounte is really the point guard, or either of them are really point guards. Are they just combo guards, just guys that kind of will, shoot an occasional shot, they have length, kind of guard the perimeter, blah, 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 blah. But I think what we're seeing in DeJounte is a true maturation to becoming, the point guard of this team. Now, positionless, NBA, does that really matter anymore? Who brings the ball down the floor? It does matter as far as who's going to be the person that's going to set things up, get things running correctly, make sure that you're in the right spots. And I'm seeing more opportunities for DeJounte to grow into that role and really make a giant leap forward. And I know it's small sample size, but you have to be really impressed with the young man who's just, playing lights out right now and growing confidence by the day.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and circle back here and let's go ahead and talk about one player, which we haven't really said a whole lot about, but I'd like to kind of commend him for what he's been able to do thus far in the season from a defensive perspective. And that would be one Drew Eubanks, that we kind of briefly mentioned how he's been outplaying one Jakob Portal out there. So much so that in this last game, fellas, Coach Pop all but benched Jakob Portal and just said, you know what? I'm just going to go with Drew. He's out there performing better than Jakob from a defensive perspective, not getting into foul trouble, for one, but he's not putting up points, and that's the thing with Jakob too. Spurs fans love to see both Jakob Portal get the start over LaMarcus Aldridge. They liked what they're seeing out of Drew Eubanks, and they harp on LaMarcus Aldridge. They're like, we need to get rid of him. Let's get him off our team ASAP. Well, hold on a second. Let's go ahead and be real for 1 second. While both Jakob and Drew look great when they're out there in the open court with the younger players, they're not really offensive powerhouses. They're not putting points up there on the board. LaMarcus Aldridge can score buckets, but he needs a lot of touches as well. So you have to pick your poison. It's like, what do you want? Do you want to have defense over offense? I mean, what do you think, Ben?
That's the biggest problem. You have to find your balance. You need a LaMarcus Aldridge out there for when you just need a bucket, but he's also going to completely matador his way on defense, and that's going to be a problem. So you have to find the right pairing with him is what it comes down to. Is the right pairing Pirtle? Is the right pairing Eubanks? Do you maybe even experiment with Trey Lyles, pairing next to Aldridge at the same time on the floor? I really don't know. And I think part of it is you may be able to get away with going 4 small guys and LaMarcus out there and seeing how everyone else can kind of cover ground and get to a man and get on the help side defense. It's tough because we all have to remember LaMarcus Aldridge is old in basketball terms. He is a grandpa in basketball terms. All right. So he's not moving very well. He's prone to injuries. So the Spurs team is going to have to figure out how to play without him for stretches at a time. Both
Should they take him off
stretches
the
in
bench?
a game and stretches of games.
Yeah, that's the question. Should he be coming off the bench, or what are they going to do with him, Ben?
They pay him too much to come off the bench. That's the problem. He would never allow himself to come off the bench. I don't think. Not even after the years he spent with Popovich. I don't think he would ever accept a role coming off the bench. It's just not in him.
And there you have it, Spurs fans, because Spurs fans are, and even me, I've kind of said, hey, maybe if he comes off the bench, he can be great with that second unit out there. Would think he could thrive with that second unit. But as you have alluded to, he's getting paid way too much to come off the bench. It's not in him.
I
That's
also
not his nature.
I also think that another solution could be okay, he gets the start, that's fine, but he's not really going to play starters minutes. Maybe he plays 25 minutes a game. Maybe you play Pirtle and him together, and then you play Pirtle out there with other guys, and see how that goes. If you can get LaMarcus Aldridge in the game long enough to sustain an offense and not get hurt on defense too badly, I think it's a win. So if you can, you may need to take him out during crunch time and close games where you need stops. You just have to say, and maybe you do offense, defense subs if you have the opportunity to do that. But to me, he just doesn't play enough defense to get as many minutes as probably he'd like to play.
Yeah. So coming to you, Wesley, we've talked a little bit about how Drew has been outplaying one Yaka Portal, but again, both of these players, as we have seen, they're not putting up a ton of points. What they're going to give you on the defensive end, you're going to lose from an offensive perspective. And so we circle back to LaMarcus Aldridge. Give us your take. What do we do with him?
Yeah, the question really becomes, guys, and this is the tricky part, is you don't, I know the quick solution is, and we've all said it at some point in time, is that, trade, 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 trade. Problem is that if you do that at this moment, you're going to probably have to get some returns on long-term investments that will, clog up the, because again, he's on an expiring contract, but he's gonna have a large payout for this year at least, and you're gonna have to match some things. And I think they got to just make the best of it, And to me, like you guys said, I think the biggest point of this is that he perhaps starts the game, but he's not necessarily the guy that's going to get, the starters minutes. I really do like, circling back to Drew Eubanks, I really do like Eubanks and what his hustle has meant to this team. I think that his aggression certainly is why he's outplaying Jakob Pertl. He's not afraid to take the ball and try to ram it back into the goal. But at times it's a little bit reckless. At times it's a little bit out of control. You talk about that. This is the biggest issue that we see in this team, is that there is not a threat at the offensive end outside of LaMarcus Aldridge to score from our big men. And I think that there is still something to be said. It's a little bit of an enigma. LaMarcus, as I believe, Ben, you said, he's really aging, and he's kind of showing his age. He's not moving quite as well, injury prone. So the Spurs are asking him to do things a little differently. He's tried to shoot threes, and it hasn't been the most successful thing as of now. People are saying behind the scenes that he looks really good, and as he's practicing, and the more that he does it, he's perhaps going to be better at it. But I also just think that to some extent, they need those elbow jumpers and whatnot from him. It's just about how they mix it up to get that. They certainly can't have the ball in his hands for long stretches like he wants, like he's used to. And let's be honest, I know we're talking about the money being the reason why he's not playing that off the bench, but let's be honest, he hasn't been the most selfless person either. Because when Pop wanted him to play under his system to start with, LaMarcus was so disheartened by it, he was ready to demand a trade. He wanted out of San Antonio, and they, of course, we all know the story. We all know what kind of transpired there, and that Pop kind of let things go a little bit more towards what he was needing. But that's always been LaMarcus Aldridge. LaMarcus is who he is. I don't think we're going to change him into like a prize pony. That's not going to happen. So really the question now becomes, I think, do you play the younger guys in Pirtle and Eubanks and see what you can get out of them and hope for growth out of them? Use LaMarcus in a starter mentality, but still spread the minutes around so that they still get the youth involved. I think that's your best case scenario, unless you're willing to make a trade right now and bring somebody else in. And at that rate, who's that going to be? Would you rather be able to just see what the Spurs give you, and if you end up in the lottery, you have a plethora of incredible players to choose from. So I think that's really kind of where this is, and unfortunately, there's not a simple solution.
Yeah, there isn't. And one of the things that we're going to talk about next is going to be one Rudy Gay, Ben. I know Ben's eyes just lit up right now. So what we're going to get into with Rudy Gay is Rudy Gay has been playing some decent basketball for the San Antonio Spurs. I have to say that he's been a great defender out there. From a defensive perspective, I can see why Coach Pop has left Rudy Gay in games. He seems to be playing better defense than some of the younger players out there. And what I mean by that is that he's not making a lot of mistakes. There's not a lot of miscues with him and some of the veterans out there. And as you had pointed to, Wesley, the complexion of the game seems to slow down a little bit. And what you're meaning by that is that there's not a lot of movement, a lot of speed from these vets when they're all on the court together, as there is when the youth are out there, the young guns are out there running and gunning in the open court, looking spectacular. But the veterans just know how to play really good defense and don't make a lot of mistakes. So Rudy Gay so far, Ben, through this season, he's averaging 12.6 points per game, 4.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists. His field goal shooting percentage is one thing that you have pointed out to, and we're going to get into that with you. He's shooting 39.3% right now from the floor. His 3-point shooting percentage is an abysmal 25%. His free throw shooting percentage is 77.8%. Ben, what is the good and the bad with Rudy Gay?
Good as he can play some defense for you. The bad is he's taking a ton of shots. He's taking a ton of threes that should be spread out to other players. He's taking 12.2 shots a game. 6.4 of those shots are threes. Literally half his shots are threes. That is unacceptable. He has not been a good 3-point shooter in a long time. Now, if you want to pick and choose your spots, you're shooting 3, maybe 4 threes a game. Totally fine. Get it. That's within the offense. I can get behind that. You're taking 6 threes a game. At that point, Rudy Gay is forcing threes. And he's not hitting them, which is worse. If he was hitting them, you could forgive it all and say, oh, well, you know what? He's hitting them. It doesn't matter for the good or bad shots. You know, any made shot is a good shot, right? But he's not doing that. So that's the biggest problem. He's also not shooting well overall. Another problem. So you don't get to, you don't get to always reward yourself with more shots because you happen to be playing good defense. There's a reason you're out there to play defense. If the Spurs need you to be the guy taking more shots, then there might be a problem. They have to go back and rethink, okay, who should really be taking the shots? Because it should not be Rudy Gay. And he has looked much better. He lost weight. He looks like he's moving better than he has in a long time. And again, like you said, the defense from him has been great. But he should not be taking that many shots a game for any reason.
And let's go ahead and get into this with one Wesley Perkins here. And as Ben had pointed out too, before we started doing this recording of the Spurs Takeover, Rudy Gay is taking points away or touches away, should we say, from some of the younger players. One of those in particular, and it's been kind of an enigma why he hasn't been on the floor more often, as Devin Vassell. Rudy Gay, apparently at this point in time, is taking Devin Vassell's minutes. What do you got to say about that, Wesley?
Yeah. Okay. So this is the one problem with where Pop is and with this team is that you know that you want to satisfy the minutes of your veterans and use that, use their leadership, use their guidance, use their time to kind of steady the ship at times with the youth movement. So it's kind of that balancing act, right? It's like, you know that you have to play your young guys, but then you get into matchups like the Lakers with the 2 home games that they had. And Vassell just, he didn't play at all in this last game. And all of us are scratching our heads going, well, why? And you're right, Joe. I mean, no doubt about it. Rudy is taking his minutes. And I think some of it just has to do with the fact that from perspective of what Vassell is and his area of expertise right now is playing passing lanes, and they were playing a bigger bodied Lakers team that is going to push him away like a fly. I feel like it has to do more with matchups, and we'll see going forward. I mean, it's still such an early part of the year but I certainly think that the young man needs some more run. I know Pop is very, and we know this, Pop is very, very, very hesitant to play rookies at all. Outside of Tony Parker, who he just whipped and whipped and whipped and whipped as if he was a rookie for 3 or 4 years before he finally started to see the kid and trust him and give him the reins. Uh, Devin, I feel like, is one of those that's way ahead of his years in terms of some of the abilities that he has, but his body right now is not quite the NBA body that he has, that he needs to have in order to defend some of the players that are going to be in that same range that he's in.
Yeah, he
You know,
needs to put on some muscle.
Oh, there's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. I mean, you think about nobody can guard Montrezl Harrell, but think about Montrezl Harrell, and then think about Devin Vassell. Think about the differences there, in what we're talking about versus a Rudy Gay, who does have a more stock body and whatnot in the way that he's able to do things.
He's
You
been
know,
eating tamales. He's been
hey,
eating some tamales.
he's definitely been eating. Uh, but again, I look at it and say there has to be a balancing act. I think they do have to play the young man. I think Vassell needs to get some run. He's shown the ability to have such good instincts. He's not only a strong, defender in terms of especially his help side defense and what he's able to do to help get the ball out of the passing lanes, but he's also shown the ability to find his teammates, to take good timely shots, to shoot the three well, something that Rudy Gay is not doing. But again, when we talk about volume shooting, guys, just want to bring this up too. Rudy Gay is attempting six and a half threes a game, 6.5. That's a lot, and he's shooting 25%. Take that to let's talk about your guy who's improved, Ben DeMar. He's taking two and a half a game and averaging over 53% from three. Again, it's in knowing what your abilities are, and I think that's really where Pop has to kind of figure some things out right now. Rudy's abilities, he's so good in that mid post area. He's really good about getting his players into about the free throw line area and taking those jumpers, and those are pretty automatic for him on most given nights. So I just feel like this team has to learn. You heard Sean Elliott talk about it last night on the TV cast, that sometimes you just don't have to back up to that 3-point line to just let it fly. Sometimes you just need to go with what the best particular shot is in that moment. And I just feel like maybe Rudy's getting caught up into that a little bit. He just needs to learn that his game will still fit with what they're trying to do. And at the same token, I do hope that Pop is not going to just be the same Pop with rookies. I do hope that Vassell is going to see some time, and maybe it's just going to depend night to night on the matchups.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what happens. It's going to be a long season. We're only 5 games into the 72 game season, so a lot of things can change. I'm sure that you gentlemen will agree. Lineups will change throughout the season. No doubt that's going to happen, especially seeing as Coach Pop will want to try to exploit some matchups, things of that nature, to give the Spurs a better chance of capitalizing and winning some games. But so far, thus far into the season, the Spurs, I'm going to go ahead and read some points or some stats off for you guys as far as what they've done, as far as their pace goes. And we've seen the pace, it's increased. They've been playing a faster pace of basketball through these first 5 games. They're ranked ninth out of 30 teams. Their pace right now is 102.9. Their offensive rating, they're 17th out of 30 teams. And right now they're averaging about 107.9 points per game. Their defensive rating, 15th out of 30 teams. They're kind of holding teams to about 109.1 points on average per game. It's not bad, but it could get better. Again, defensive lapses, little mistakes, miscues, things of that nature. But it's because, once again, it's part of the youth movement. With youth, you get an experience. They're only going to get better the more games they play. Overall, you like what the Spurs are doing so far this season. They've looked more competitive. Is that going to translate into more wins than last season? And I'm going to be real with everybody. It's probably not. I think they're going to be able to match their win total if they exceed it by maybe 2 or 3 games. That's great. But realistically, when you look at this team as a whole, they're going to look competitive out there with this youth movement. Yes, but it's also going to come with a lot of mistakes. While they're going to probably be competitive in a lot of these games, they're going to lose a lot of close games, as we saw when you're playing against some of the upper elite teams in the East and in the Western Conference. It happens. Every team goes through a kind of a rebuild phase. I think right now the Spurs are in a reloading phase. Not a complete rebuild, but we don't necessarily have to tank in order to get that high draft pick, which this year's NBA draft is stacked. And I know Ben is salivating at the mouth right now. So go ahead and let us hear more about that, Ben. We don't have to tank in order to get a top draft pick.
I will reiterate, you don't have to tank to get a great draft pick this year. You don't. This draft is deep. This draft is talented. And frankly, this draft is just not 2020, which really that means it already has 15 other things going for it. So be patient. Let the young guys get their minutes. Let them make their mistakes. As long as it's all coming within the flow of the game, it's all good, right? You can get a great pick. You can get a guy who's going to help your team immediately, anywhere in the top 20, if not the entire first round this year. And of course, if there are that many good players in the first round, there are a ton of dudes you should not be sleeping on in the second as well.
And there you go. So I know, Wesley, you kind of feel the same way. I think this is going to be a year of patience for all the Spurs fans. And I've said this going in, before the season even started. Whether they win or whether they lose, I'm going to enjoy watching the growth of the younger players on this team. To me, this year is all about getting that experience and growing as players. And you need that to happen in order for you to get better, and you have to go through this adversity in order to build upon that to get you to the playoffs. So, Wesley, go ahead and let us know, what do you think? What do you see in this season?
Well, amen, Joe. I really feel like with both of your points that this team has so many good pieces right now. And the Spurs did the best thing they could have done in this short offseason that they had. And that is to lock up all of the guys that they had. And I know that, Spurs fandom was going nuts about, hey, all these free agents, we need to sign a free agent. The Spurs didn't have the money to sign those free agents. They didn't have the cap space to sign the names that were there. And to be honest, the names that were there got way overpaid. We could have a whole nother show about that. But the fact of the matter is that they did the smart thing. They took their pieces. They knew that they liked the pieces that they had, and they locked them up. They kept them. They've given them at least in some respects gave contract extensions. In some respects, took on the options and kept players for another year. And I just think that again, that's part of doing it the right way. It's really easy to look and see what the Lakers are doing. It's really easy to look and see what the Clippers are doing, what the Nets are doing, and say the super team is the wave of the future. How many super teams have won multiple NBA titles and been actual, and this is the big key here, right? Have been actual meaningful franchises over a long period of time. It doesn't happen. And I think if we're smart enough to realize this as Spurs fans, we know that 22-year period of making the playoffs, success is very fragile. And all it takes is a couple of things to go against you, and it can quickly go away. And we saw that. We've seen that happen to us, and now know that it's not as easy as it looks. Everybody just thinks, oh, gosh, we got to get to the NBA Finals. We got to win a title. It's not like that. We've all grown up around the era where the Spurs were not that. And just so to see what they're doing now with these young guys and allowing them to grow together, it's the right move. And whether or not they make the playoffs this year or don't, I know that they'll be competitive to the end. They're going to fight. They're going to tooth and claw. They're going to scratch. There may be fourth quarters that we think, oh, gosh, they just could have hit that last shot, or man, they would have done this or that. That's part of youth. But again, it's a win-win season, and everybody has to see it for that, because at the end of this season, if you don't make the playoffs, I believe personally they're going to be in the play-in situation. I think they're going to be in one of those 7 to 10 spots by the end. But if they're not, they're still going to get something that's going to help this franchise long term for for the foreseeable future. And you're going to see the Spurs become another dynasty, but just because of the fact that they've done this the right way. Everybody has to keep that into mind.
Yeah, so we have this in closing here. We have the Spurs playing against the Utah Jazz, and that game is going to take place on Sunday at 6 p.m. If there is such a thing, gentlemen, as a must win, should I say, this early on in the season, this is it. You got to get some wins in order to keep pace with some of these better teams in the Western Conference. If you continue losing close games, you're setting yourself up for failure early on in the season. It's hard to get back and climb back in the race when you go down by a number of games, So a much needed win will help everything. But this is a scenario we're looking at. Tomorrow on Sunday, the Spurs have the Utah Jazz. And they're no pushovers by any means. Well coached, a lot of great young players on that team. You have to contend with one Rudy Gobert, which the Spurs have notoriously have had issues with. Then you have Donovan Mitchell, So again, he can go off on you, and we haven't seemed to really have an answer for him. Then we have Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers. And I got to say, Kawhi out there with the mask, ever since he's had his injuries from Serge Ibaka, it looks like Uncle Dennis is the one that bought him that mask off of Wish because it barely fits him. So then after the Clippers, should I say, they played the Lakers. Then they played the Timberwolves on a back-to-back, the Thunder, and then again on another back-to-back, the Rockets. And it doesn't get easier. After they play the Rockets on a back-to-back, they play the Portland Trailblazers.
Jesus.
Guys.
It was an incredibly front-loaded schedule.
It is. And you know what? It's going to really test them. On paper, the Minnesota Timberwolves are a talented bunch. They're not some team that you can just look over and say, oh, these are instant dubs. They're instant wins. They're not. The Spurs, they are talented as well. The Minnesota Timberwolves, if you look at them, they're not a better team than the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs are the better team. However, Minnesota right now doesn't have a really bad record, so there you go again. You can't take these teams for granted.
Okay, give it time. Minnesota will get to the bottom like they usually do.
They will,
They
but I'm saying
dwelling in their cellar. There's a lot of wine down there for them.
Yeah, this early on in the season, though, their record's not that bad, but it is early on in the season. What I'm saying is the Spurs can't take these teams for granted. We've seen what has happened when they've taken teams for granted. The teams like the Knicks will wind up beating them. It's like we can't have those things happen. So it all starts with the Utah Jazz. Gentlemen, what do you think is going to happen? Do you see the Spurs winning this matchup that's coming up against the Utah Jazz? We'll start with you, Ben.
That's tough. Like you said, for whatever reason, Rudy Gobert gives them trouble, and he doesn't really do anything on offense for them.
No.
I also happen to think he is the owner of he might be the most overpaid big man in the league right
now. 100%.
He earned an extension, but not $205 million.
No.
But you get a shiny piece of hardware one time, and people look at you differently. So, yay for Defensive Player of the Year. I'm also pretty certain that was the same year he actually made second team All Defense. So, how these things go, no one knows. They make 0 sense. That happened to Marc Gasol one time as well. He won the Defensive Player of the Year and was named to the second team All Defense. Don't know how that happens. He's the Defensive Player of the Year. Anywho, I'm gonna get off this rant, but yeah, Spurs got to figure that one out. I think they can throw a couple of different bodies at Donovan Mitchell. They have a big body they can throw at him. They have DeJounte Murray. If Derek White is available and he's feeling right, I think he'll be a guy they might throw at him. So you have options to at least try and give him different looks, try and give him different, make him do different things on offense and make him do different things on defense for that matter as well. So it's tough. I don't know if they're going to win that game. Like you said, it's a really brutal early stretch of games for this team.
Yeah, that it is. Wesley, what are your predictions for this next game? Because the Utah Jazz is going to close out their homestand. Then they're going to hit the road, and they're going to play the Clippers and the Lakers. So, Wesley, what are your predictions?
Yeah, guys, I think this is actually a must-win for them. If for not anything else, then for the psyche, especially for those that have, you're building a team here, and you want to know that what you're doing is working. We all see that it's working, but you want to see some results of it working as well. And wins are certainly going to be the result of that. And I do think they beat Utah. I think the road trip's going to be a little interesting. We'll see what happens. But again, this is such a wacky Western Conference. What if I told you that the bottom team in the Western Conference is the Denver Nuggets? at 1-4 right now? What if I told you that the Houston Rockets are 1-2, the Oklahoma City Thunder, which we might expect 1-3? You know, everybody's had some teetering right now. So I think part of that settling in process, especially with lots of teams having new pieces, is where we are. And that's could be to the Spurs' advantage, considering the fact that they've played a little bit together. This youth movement has been going for a little bit now. But again, coming against a front-loaded schedule like it is, it's going to be pretty tough to prove their mettle right off the bat. So I do think they beat Utah. I think they match up pretty well with them outside of Gobert. And again, Gobert is going to control the paint, but I think the Spurs, uh, you know, lock down defensively enough to be able to beat the Jazz. I wouldn't be surprised if they go on the road and actually beat the Clippers. I think they'll lose again to the Lakers. I just think the Lakers are in a different place right now than anybody else, for that matter, in the NBA. It's just they're a team that's set up to win, you know, for quite a while. And I just feel like, you know, for this Spurs team, for their own psyche, I don't think they can lose, you know, a fourth game in a row. They need to stop the losing streak now. We've seen this team in the years past when it was playing a different style go on an 8-game losing streak, and that the can't see, we don't want to see that. I mean, this young team needs for its own psyche to see that W get put up again and to know what they're doing is the right thing.
Well, there you have it. So we can only be optimistic, and hopefully the Spurs get the dub tomorrow against the Utah Jazz and they start a winning streak. Because as I stated, you need to get wins in order to stay competitive in the hotly contested Western Conference. So, gentlemen, as we close this show, Ben, where can the people follow you and see all the great content that you got coming out for Project Spurs?
Well, all of my great content will be at Project Spurs. I've got Evan Mobley coming out this week, a USC center, 7 feet tall. Love his game. Of course, you'll be able to read more about that when it comes out. After that, I'm profiling Greg Brown for Texas, 6'9" power forward. Just played a little today, actually. So I've got a little more data to use on him. And you can also follow me on Twitter at @the_Boomstein. I will take all of your hot takes, whether it regards the NBA, the Spurs, college basketball, comic book movies, whatever you want. Hit me. Come at me, bro. It me, as the kids say.
And there you go. Make sure you go and follow Ben. Wesley, where can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'm at Wesley Perk on Twitter. It's been a lot of fun talking, you know, Spurs and Tech basketball, but lately, man, it's a lot of fun to talk. This is a whole nother show, but talking about the UT debacle that is going on with Coach Herman being fired and whatnot. So I'm getting lit up right now for some of my takes, and that's okay. I'm willing to talk back. But if you want to talk any sports, anything, basketball, Spurs, hook me up.
There you go. Make sure you follow Wesley, and you can follow me at Two Shots Podcast. And like I say, it's always spelled out TWO, not two, the number two, Two Shots Podcast. And I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. And again, you know, like Ben and Wesley, I'm here to go ahead and talk with you in regards to the world of sports and also pop culture. We love our movies, we love our streaming, series. So if you got something for us, let us know. We're all in this together right now, and I think I've watched all of Netflix. So if you got something new for me to watch, send it my way. So, and also make sure you go and follow projectspurs.com on social media and make sure you follow, Project Spurs to get the latest Spurs updates. You know, we have a great group of writers where you can read the latest ongoings of the San Antonio Spurs. And once again, that is at projectspurs.com. So for Benjamin Bornstein and Wesley Perkins, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you guys for watching another episode of the Spurs Takeover. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're out. Peace.